I had always believed that Kihind and I were destined to be together. From the moment we met, there was something magical about the way he looked at me, like I was the only woman in the world. We were young then, full of hope and dreams, and when he asked me to be his wife, I thought I had won the greatest prize. But something changed. It didn't happen overnight, it was a slow, creeping shift that began to unravel the very fabric of our marriage. Kihind was a successful man, well respected in the village, and his business grew by the day. At first, I was proud of him, happy to be the wife of a man everyone admired. But soon, his attention drifted away from me. The warm embraces that had once made me feel safe became fewer, the loving words that had once filled my ears were replaced by silence. Kihind spent more and more time away, and when he did come home, he barely spoke to me. I tried to ignore the rumors. The whispers of women in the marketplace claiming they had seen him with another woman. "He's going to take another wife," they said, their voices dripping with pity. I dismissed them at first, convincing myself that Kihind loved me, that he would never betray our vows. But the doubts grew like a thorn in my heart, pricking at me every time I saw the distant look in his eyes. Then one evening, Kihind came home later than usual. He smelled of perfume that wasn't mine, and when I questioned him, he dismissed me with a wave of his hand. "You worry too much, Adunni," he said, his voice cool and detached. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I knew that something had to change. I could feel him slipping away, and the thought of losing him filled me with a dread I couldn't shake. It was during one of my weekly trips to the marketplace that I first heard the whispers. The women gathered in small circles, their voices hushed but urgent, as if they were sharing a secret too dangerous to speak aloud. I lingered near one such group, pretending to inspect a basket of yams as I strained to hear what they were saying. "Menstrual blood," one of the women whispered. "Ayabo used it to bind her husband's love to her. They say he never looked at another woman again." The name Ayabo sent a chill through me. She had been a woman in our village years ago, beautiful and proud, but she had disappeared mysteriously. No one knew what had happened to her, but the rumors persisted. Some said she had fled in shame, while others whispered that something darker had claimed her. I quickly walked away from the group, my heart pounding in my chest. Could it be true? Could something so simple, so intimate, hold the power to bind a man's love? The idea took root in my mind, and no matter how hard I tried to dismiss it, it refused to let go. That night, I dreamed of Ayabo. Her face was half hidden in shadow, her eyes wide with fear as she reached out to me, her mouth moving soundlessly. I woke up in a cold sweat, the memory of her face etched in my mind. The whispers had found their way into my soul, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than I had heard. The days that followed were filled with an unbearable weight. Kihind continued to drift further away, his late nights becoming more frequent, his affection for me nearly gone. I tried to talk to him, to reach him, but it was like speaking to a ghost. He was there, but not really there. The man I had married was slipping through my fingers, and I was powerless to stop it. That's when I decided to visit Mama Sei. She lived on the outskirts of the village, in a small, weathered hut surrounded by ancient trees. Mama Sei was known for her knowledge of herbs and spiritual matters, though many in the village whispered that she had dabbled in dark magic. I didn't care. I was desperate. The inside of Mama Sei's hut was dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of herbs and something else, something old and powerful. She sat across from me, her eyes piercing as she listened to my story. "Menstrual blood," I finally whispered, my voice trembling. "I've heard it can bind a man's soul. Is it true?" Mama Sei didn't respond right away. She stared at me for a long time, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and serious. "Blood is life," she said. When you mix your life force with another, the bond is deep. It goes beyond this world. You will change things you cannot undo. I shivered at her words, but I was too far gone. I have no choice, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I can't lose him. Mama sighed and handed me a small, carved wooden figure. Take this, she said. It may help you when things get dark. But remember, once you cross this line, you cannot return unchanged. I left her heart with a heavy heart, knowing that I was about to do something I could never take back. When my next cycle came, I knew what I had to do. I prepared Kihain's favorite dish, the goosey soup with pounded yam, and as I stirred the pot, I added the forbidden ingredient. My hands shook as I mixed my blood into the soup, feeling the weight of what I was doing. It felt wrong, unnatural, but I couldn't stop. I was too desperate. That evening, Kihain came home, as usual, barely acknowledging me as he sat down to eat. I watched him closely, my heart pounding in my chest as he took the first spoonful. He didn't notice anything strange. Bite after bite, he ate the meal, oblivious to the secret I had hidden within. That night, for the first time in months, Kihain pulled me into his arms. His touch was warm, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to hope that maybe the ritual had worked. In the days that followed, Kihain's behavior changed. He became more affectionate, more attentive. He stayed home more often, showering me with love and attention. It was everything I had wanted, everything I had prayed for. But soon, I realized that something was wrong. His love wasn't normal, it was obsessive. At first, Kihain's newfound attention felt like a blessing. He would hold my hand, kiss my forehead, and whisper sweet words that made my heart soar. But as the days passed, his affection became suffocating. He rarely let me out of his sight, insisting that I stay close to him at all times. When I tried to leave the house, he would grow anxious, his eyes filled with a strange intensity. "Why would you want to leave?" he asked one afternoon, his grip on my arm tight. "You are all I need." The look in his eyes sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't love, it was something darker, something that twisted my stomach in knots. I tried to talk to him, to reason with him, but it was no use. Kihain had become consumed by his love for me, and nothing else mattered. His business began to suffer. He stopped attending meetings, leaving his workers to handle everything. They came to the house, pleading with me to convince him to return to work, but Kihain refused. He would only smile and say, "I don't need business. I have you." At night, I would wake up to find him watching me, his eyes wide and unblinking. When I asked him why he wasn't sleeping, he would only smile and say, "I don't need to sleep. I only need you." The suffocation grew unbearable. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Kihain's love had become a prison, and I was trapped inside. As Kihain's obsession deepened, strange things began happening in the house. Objects would move on their own, food would spoil mysteriously, and a foul odor lingered in the corners. Kihain seemed oblivious to it all, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that something dark and unseen was watching us. At night, my dreams were filled with terrifying images, shadowy figures reaching for me, their voices whispering in a language I couldn't understand. And always, I saw Ayabu. Her face was twisted in sorrow and anger, her eyes pleading with me to stop, to undo what I had done. But I didn't know how. One night, I woke up to find Kihain sleepwalking through the house, muttering strange words under his breath. His eyes were open but glazed over, and his voice was not his own. "The price must be paid," he whispered over and over again. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to find a way to undo what I had done. Desperate, I returned to Mama Say, hoping she could help me. When I arrived, she was already waiting for me, as if she had known I would come. Her face was grim as she listened to my story. "You have invited a dark spirit into your life," she said. "The blood you used was sacred, and now it controls both of you. The spirit feeds on the life force of those it binds, and it will not leave until it has taken what it desires. Is there a way to stop it?" I asked, my voice trembling with fear. Mama Say nodded slowly. "There is a way, but it will not be easy. You must confess what you have done to the entire village, and then we will perform a cleansing ritual at the river. But know this, the spirits will come for you. They will try to take you with them, and you must resist with everything you have. If you fail, you will be lost forever." The thought of confessing my sin to the village filled me with dread, but I knew I had no choice. Kihain's life, and my own, depended on it. Gathering the courage to confess was the hardest thing I had ever done. I called for a meeting in the village square, knowing that once I spoke, my life would never be the same. As I stood before the crowd, their eyes boring into me, I could feel the weight of their judgment. The whispers had already spread, and I knew they thought I was a witch, that I had bewitched my own husband. My family stood in the crowd, their faces filled with confusion and disappointment. With trembling hands, I told them everything. I confessed to using my menstrual blood in Kihain's food, to performing the forbidden ritual, and to the dark consequences that had followed. The crowd gasped in shock, some recoiling in horror, others shouting accusations of witchcraft. My mother's face was pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Adunni, how could you?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Just as the crowd grew restless, Mama Say stepped forward, her presence commanding. She spoke of the ritual we would perform, explaining that it was the only way to save Kihain and rid the village of the dark spirit that had taken hold. That night, under the light of a full moon, we gathered at the riverbank. The air was thick with tension as Mama Say began the ritual, her voice chanting prayers to the ancestors. I knelt by the water's edge, my heart pounding with fear. As the ritual progressed, the atmosphere grew colder, and the air around us seemed to vibrate with unseen energy. Suddenly, the spirits appeared, dark, shadowy figures rising from the water, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Among them was Ayabo, her face twisted in sorrow and anger. The spirits surrounded me, their voices echoing in my mind, whispering of my guilt, my shame, and the price I had to pay. They reached for me, their cold, spectral hands pulling at my arms and legs, trying to drag me into the water. I fought against them with everything I had, screaming for help as their grip tightened. But then, I saw Ayabo, really saw her. Her eyes were filled with pain, but also understanding. She had been desperate, just like me, and now her spirit was trapped because of the same mistake I had made. With tears in my eyes, I begged Ayabo for forgiveness. I told her I was sorry, that I hadn't meant for things to go this far. I promised to honor the sacredness of the blood from now on and pleaded for the chance to free Kihain. For a moment, Ayabo's face softened, and the spirit's grip on me weakened. Mama Say's chants grew louder, calling on the ancestors to intervene. Slowly, the spirits began to retreat, fading back into the river until only Ayabo remained. She gave me one last look before disappearing into the night. The ritual was over, but the scars it left behind were deep. Kihain awoke the next morning, free from the spirit's grip, but he was not the man he had once been. The curse had taken a toll on him, leaving him frail and broken. His mind was fragmented, and though he still loved me, our relationship was forever changed. The village, too, was different. Though the dark spirit was gone, the people could no longer look at me the same way. I had confessed to a sin too great to forgive, and the whispers of witchcraft continued to follow me. Even my family distanced themselves, unable to understand why I had done what I did. I was an outcast, living in the shadow of my choices. Kihind was alive, but the man I had loved was gone, and the guilt of what I had done weighed heavy on my soul. One night, long after the ritual, I dreamed of Ayabo again. This time, she was not angry. Her face was calm, her eyes filled with a quiet sadness. She told me that while the curse had been lifted, the burden of my choices would always remain. "We are bound by the blood," she whispered. "But you survived. Now you must live with it." When I awoke, I knew that Ayabo was right. I had crossed a line, and though I had survived, I would carry the weight of that choice for the rest of my life.